Do you remember there was a long time there where we were wondering where this bloke was getting his money from? Remember in the early 80s, he didn't have that much of a reputation for being too much of a businessman. And then somehow in like the mid to late 80s, everything flipped and he was rubbing shoulders with some of the richest, most powerful people in the world. What strategy was this guy using? What was he doing that was so successful in getting people to team up with him?
Back in that bag again. Whoa, whoa, yeah, yeah. Hey, hey, hey.
Well, I mean, it seems from just digging below the surface a little bit, which a lot of us have been doing over the last couple of years, that, I mean, it was an interesting approach to business, wasn't it? It was a unique perspective that he took on how to flourish as a businessman, frowned upon by a lot of people, unethical in some people's standards, but I mean, he seemed to get away with it with some very powerful figures for a very long time. Today, I wanted to speak to you about an article that the Wall Street Journal's recently put out. The story goes pretty much into the reputation that Epstein had developed for himself for a very long time. His unique business strategy, which was getting people to expose very vulnerable information, and then with that information, leveraging it to be able to get money or whatever it was that he was pursuing or chasing from that particular person. Otherwise, he'd expose the little secrets. So it's interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of names that have been to Epstein's island. You know, the one where we know about it now. Underage girls would be flown out there. They'd be sexually abused. Powerful people would go there. They would be filmed or at least engage in behaviors which, I mean, we can speculate was not A-plus behavior, like stuff that you probably really couldn't go home and tell your wives about because a lot of these guys had them. Bill Gates was one of those particular people. Now, here's how the story goes. Bill Gates, one of the world's richest men, founder of Microsoft, was rubbing shoulders with Jeffrey Epstein for a little while. Now, despite the fact that he said it was purely philanthropic, it seems as though it might have been something a little more. And I mean, when the rumors come out like they have from the Wall Street Journal, there's even more reason to believe it could have been a little bit more. Story goes that Bill Gates apparently loves the game bridge. I don't personally know how to play it that well. Never really been a big fan of the game bridge. Games in general aren't necessarily my thing. But he had an affair with a Russian girl in her 20s who was apparently a great lover of bridge. The two of them came together. It's not how I meant it to sound. The two of them played together is what I'm trying. It doesn't matter how you explain this situation. It sounds sexual, doesn't it? But essentially, they sat down for a game of bridge. They developed a relationship. Despite the fact that Bill was married at the time, he had a cheeky little affair. Now, this information was supposed to be to himself, but the cheeky little Russian lady came back to Bill later and said, hey, listen, I want to start a foundation. You've got a reputation, a little bit of swagger in the foundation world. Would you consider supporting me on this endeavor? And Billy Boy goes, look, I love you for the bridge. I love you for your body. Unfortunately, I don't want you to touch any of my money, so I'm not going to be giving any of this to you. Jeffrey Epstein, in the true Epstein style, came out and said, hey, look, don't worry about it. I'll fund it for you. Don't stress. I've got you covered. It's all good. She goes, well, I didn't know the guy at the time. I wasn't 100% sure who he was, but he was generous. He was wealthy. He seemed to care about what it was that I was doing, and he funded it for me. Then a couple of years later, old Billy Boy opened up his computer, opened his emails, and found a cheeky email from Jeffrey Epstein saying, mate, listen here. I found out about what happened with the Russian. I found out about it. He's like, well, no, we just played bridge. He goes, look, mate, you had an affair. You're married. This is going to look real bad for you. I'm going to need some reimbursement. And so that's the game that started to be played. Now, though we're told these guys met up 6 or 7 times purely for philanthropic reasons to discuss money and change and how they can use their power for good.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No, I had dinner with him and that's all.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
There never was any relationship of any kind.
It turns out that conversation about using power for good was about how do we just keep this information about our secret life to ourselves so that no one ever has to find out about it. And that was where the conversation got really interesting. This is where the Epstein conversation gets really interesting because apparently he had a reputation for doing this with a number of people. A lot of people ask the question, how did he get so successful at business? How did he rub shoulders with these people? Well, it turns out all you need is a high level of ambition and a low level of ethics, and you've got yourself a pretty good combination for what it takes to get valuable resources out of people who have put themselves in vulnerable positions. Rumor has it that what he would do, Epstein that is when he was your friend, he would be the best friend that you could possibly have. He would go above and beyond. He would do whatever he could to support you on your journey. He would make sure the drinks you required were in the office. He would make sure the food you required was at the table. Whatever you needed, Jeffrey Epstein was there. And as he became more and more friends with you, you'd get more and more comfortable. And then all of a sudden, you would blurt out, I cheated on my wife with a 20-year-old Russian, and I've got so much valuable information I could share with you, and here it all comes. And Epstein's sitting there going, interesting. You're a billionaire. This is going to be incredibly beneficial. But he was certainly a powerful player, is what I'm trying to say. We know that. We've known that for a long time. But what he got away with, despite his convictions, it's unbelievable, really, isn't it? Like, how does a bloke with these convictions still rub shoulders with some of the most powerful people in the world? Either he's got some incredible security network, which really let him down on that final night, or there's some government officials, there's some other people who are really holding him up to be able to support him, because the amount that he gets away with, despite the amount of convictions that he's got next to his name, is, I mean, it's sort of unheard of unless you're a real powerful player. What did you guys make of this whole situation? I'd love to know your thoughts. I mean, it was striking. The more you find out about a bloke like Epstein, the less of a surprise it is. But the more surprising it is to see people that you used to look at and go, he seems like a good bloke, hanging out with him, perhaps making some disappointing choices. What did you think of his business strategy? I mean, it's highly unethical, to say the least. It's highly effective when it comes to getting people in vulnerable positions to extract money from them or resources from them a little later down the line, which we've seen here with Bill Gates. What do you think of Bill Gates? Is he trusted? Can you trust him? The conversation around him's been interesting over the last few years as well, as he starts to venture out from what was his original love in computers and technology to farming and health and vaccines. He's a very interesting and diverse character who seems to be quite divisive. If you like that video, give it a little love, give it a little like. Make sure you hit subscribe, hang around, got new videos coming out for you every week. Can we trust Bill Gates? Can we not? You let me know in the comments below.